what is the hard problem of consciousness.
The hard problem of consciousness is simply the only difference between us and other life forms is we get to reflect on it and create stories about it. So an alligator doesn't know that it's called an alligator. That's a human name for that experience in non-local awareness. Awareness is non-local. It's not personal. Mind is personal.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Our Future Nature. Today we have a super special guest, Dr. Deepak Chopra. He's joining us here at 1880 in Singapore, and we're very excited to be able to interview him. We're going to talk about the secrets of mindfulness and the quantum body and what that means for us as humans in the 21st century.
We're going to talk to Deepak about his experiences with psychedelics and how they can broaden our awareness of our true reality. We're also going to learn about how disease can be eradicated just through connecting to source. Let's see about the ideal world that Deepak envisages on how to create a more conscious future.
And of course, you can help out by liking and subscribing to the channel. And also don't forget to comment about what you think consciousness is. Deepak, thanks so much for joining us again in Singapore.
Sure.
I know you've had a long day. We had a wonderful reception here at 1880 last night. So we've talked a lot about the quantum body and the hard problem of consciousness. Why don't we start off by summarizing what is the hard problem of consciousness?
The hard problem of consciousness is simply how do physical atoms, molecules, neural activities create experience. And I think it's an oxymoron, in my opinion, because you start with the assumption that matter is the ontological primitive of reality, when in fact matter is an experience in consciousness. Matter is a word that humans give to perceptual activity in consciousness. The consciousness, when it modifies itself as sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, the sum total of that is what we call physical matter. This is a sofa or a cushion that's a construct, a human construct. But fundamentally, it's an experience. And what's the experience? Sensations of all kinds: visual sensation, tactile sensation, image, feeling, and then the interpretation. Oh, this is a sofa. But before you interpret it, it's a combination of sensations. So all we are is a bundle of sensations, and everything else is a bundle of sensations. And sensations is how consciousness experiences itself as mind, body, and the universe. So there's no hard problem of consciousness if you forget that you're assuming that matter is fundamental. If you assume that consciousness is fundamental, then matter is a human concept for a combination of human sensations, not any other sensation. The sensation of a butterfly experiencing this is different from yours or that of a crocodile or any other species. So as long as we think that there's an objective world independent of the observer, then there's a hard problem.
Yes.
But if we realize that everything is an observation, and in fact, there are infinite observations and they are species specific, there's no hard problem. So consciousness is best defined as the subject of all experience. In every species, it's the knowing of experience. Not only do we have an experience, we know we are having an experience. So that's awareness of experience. And you can say consciousness is awareness of experience. It is experience, it's the knowing of experience. It's that in which experience occurs, it's that in which experience is known. And it's that in which everything ultimately is a modification of itself. So consciousness, both the observer and the observed, ultimately.
You have a scientific background as a physician, but essentially what you're saying is that Einstein was wrong. And I've heard you've talked about this before, that he was a naive realist. Can you elaborate on that and confirm that's what you're saying?
Naive realism is not a condescending term, okay? It's a philosophical term in science. Naive realism means that the human experience of the universe is the objective universe. And on the face of it, it can't be true, right? It also, naive realism says that the human look of the universe is the actual picture of the universe. But the picture of the universe is observer dependent and it's species dependent. Naive realism also says that the world would exist exactly how humans see it if humans weren't there. That doesn't make sense either. So while naive realism is philosophy, and it's actually science is based on that philosophy. If you didn't believe in an objective universe, you couldn't do science. But in the deeper reality, therefore, science is very useful. Naive realism is very useful for making predictions of outcomes of experiments. But it doesn't answer the question, what is real? So what is real is not perceptual or conceptual. It is the source of perception and conception. So in that sense, Einstein qualifies as a naive realist, not a condescending term. It's a scientific term, philosophical term. On the other hand, the pioneers of quantum physics like Niels Bohr and Max Planck and Schrödinger and almost all of them, Paul Dirac, they were what we call idealists. So they go back to Plato in a sense that everything that we experience as physical is actually the projection of an idea, the projection of consciousness. That's idealism. But I'm not talking of either. I'm talking about what is reality, because even ideas are objects of experience. So what I'm talking about is non-duality, which says there's only one entity, and that one entity is consciousness, the source of all experience. And it is not only the source of all experience, it projects all experience. So every object is a modified expression of that one reality. And there is only that one reality. Whatever term you want to call it. We are the bit of the it.
Plato's allegory about the prisoner in the cave was exactly right then, according to what you're saying.
Although now we can have modern allegories, which are, I think, more helpful. Think of a program or infinite programs on a television screen. The only constant there is the screen. So the screen is consciousness, and the programs are the projection of that screen as electrons and photons appearing as images and sounds and textures and colors and stories and characters. Those are all happening in time. The screen is not in time, as an analogy. Or you can take another analogy, the surface of the ocean as waves. The bottom of the ocean is the source of those waves. The ocean itself is a constant. The waves are constantly changing depending on the weather patterns, the movement of the earth, rotation of the sun, etc. But relatively speaking, the floor of the ocean is non-changing and independent of the waves of the ocean. Those are analogies and good metaphors. Plato's analogy is also good. What we experience as the physical world is in fact the shadow world.
Our Future Nature is brought to you today by the Conscious Festival Retreat. It's time to unleash your greatness, tap into your true potential, and become the conscious leader you were born to be. You're invited to join me at the 5-day Conscious Festival Self-Mastery Retreat in Bali, surrounded by breathtaking nature and the soothing sounds of waterfalls. From the 18th to the 22nd of June, we'll dive deep into a transformational experience that will unleash your inner power and redefine your creativity. So check out www.theconsciousfestival.com/retreats to learn more about our upcoming wellness experiences to help you find your awe.
Can I ask Deepak, how do you think our expanded knowledge of animal consciousness or even societal values in trees can help us understand or have a perspective on the world?
I think if you look at all biological organisms, instruments of observation and observing and experience, then every biological organism in that sense is a sentient being. Trees, plants, microbes, animals, fish, amphibians, primates, humans. The only difference between us and other life forms is we get to reflect on it and create stories about it. So an alligator doesn't know that it's called an alligator. That's a human name for that experience in non-local awareness. Awareness is non-local. It's not personal. Mind is personal. But awareness is the common ground of all minds, because minds are conditioned awareness. So the conditioning in humans is historical, it's religious, it's economic, it's mythical, it's religious. But then consciousness also modifies itself, has innumerable minds, culturally different, ethnically different, historically different, economically different. That's it. The varieties of minds you get in that one consciousness. But then you get varieties of mind, plant mind, animal mind, tree mind, etc. So think of mind as innumerable modifications of an infinite formless field of all possibilities. That's consciousness. It's not personal. And it's not in space-time. Actually, even mind is not in space-time. You would ask you, where's your mind? You point here, but you can't have a mind by itself. Mind is both embodied and relational. It's a process. And it regulates energy and information and an ecosystem of relationships. So mind has no location in space-time. Consciousness has no location in space-time. We say matter has location in space-time, but that's a hallucination as well, because what we call matter is a perceptual activity which has no location in space-time. It's happening in consciousness. Everything is non-local, even though it appears local.
If everything's non-local, how do we prove that? I mean, scientists are still trying to find dark matter. So how do you prove that what you're saying is true? Because there's no way of measuring it at this present moment.
You can't measure the subject of experience. You can only measure the object of experience. And that is because all objects are finite. Something that's infinite can't be measured. It's incomprehensible. It's imperceivable. It's not conceivable. But without it, there's no conception or perception, and therefore no experience. So every label you give yourself is a finite label of the infinite. The only reality is infinite. And we need the infinite even to do math, symbols. But the symbol is not the reality, because the symbol is a concept of infinity. So everything perceivable and conceivable is a symbolic representation of the infinite, which is inconceivable. That's the problem in science. Science is a methodology for doing experiments, making observations, and coming up with theories. And it's a never-ending process, because everything, in fact, one of the rules of science is, if it's a scientific fact, then it's falsifiable. If it's not falsifiable, then it's not a scientific fact. If you can't prove it to be false, then it's not scientific. And that's why science is, in fact, a very wonderful creation of human beings, because it's only science for scientifically verifiable for what it predicts. But there are many things it doesn't predict. Okay, so right now, we know that the observable universe is 0.01% of the universe. The rest is dark matter, dark energy. We have no idea what it is. Those are theoretical concepts to explain gravity. Basically, the forces of gravity and anti-gravity, dark energy and dark matter. They're theoretical concepts to explain what we can't explain. But the mass of the universe doesn't account for the gravity of the universe. Right. So we have to come up with these concepts. Why is the universe expanding? Dark energy. Why certain locations in the universe where it seems not to be expanding, but actually becoming dense? That's dark matter. But is it a thing or is it a concept? And it's a concept. Even atoms and molecules and particles are concepts for modes of knowing and experience and consciousness. That's a very hard thing to swallow for a lot of scientists. There's a difference between science and scientism. Okay, so science is this methodology which has created the human universe and, everything that we do today. Scientism is believing that this is the only way to truth. That, philosophy is discarded, art and music and emotions have no role. If they have a role, it's survival, it's Darwinian, etc. An explanation we come up with when, in fact, we don't really know what the explanation is. In fact, the more we know, the infinite unknowable becomes even more infinite than it was before.
That's right. And the James Webb Telescope is finding out that the universe is much bigger than we had previously thought and expanding much faster in all different directions. So essentially, to all intents and purposes, the universe is infinite to us humans.
The universe, as we describe it, is a human construct for human experience in consciousness.
Right. Which is unknowable. So, yeah.
Can I ask then, plant medicine, psychedelics as a tool for a different expanded awareness, like where did that come from? Is it the plants helping us, or how do you see the role of psychedelics?
Yes, psychedelics have had a very interesting history. They've been around since ancient times. And they've been part of religious practice, actually. I honestly believe, and this may be kind of blasphemy, but when Moses fed manna to the Israelites, there was fungus in it. And when Jesus Christ turned the water into wine, the cast had fungus in there. And in India, they talk about soma, which is the ultimate psychedelic of the gods. So what psychedelics do, and they're not all the same. Mushrooms behave in a different way. Psilocybin is different from, say, ayahuasca, which is different from LSD, which is synthetic, which is different from other psychedelics. But they all have one thing, I think, in common. On the basis of biology, they're all what we call serotonin agonists. They increase the activity of the serotonin receptor in the brain. But I think what they really do is they remove the editing of the conditioned mind. So, everything that we experience is a conditioning of the infinite, non-local field of all possibilities. That conditioning squeezes us into a certain perspective of reality, the conditioned separate mind. So once it remove this editing, you go to the source of all experience, which is infinite, expanded. And so I think that's why they've been used in religious rituals throughout the ages. There's a whole field of psychedelics now that says they improve suicidal ideation, they get rid of post-traumatic stress disorder, they help depression and phobias. All of it is true. I am finding now, though, that even psychedelics used recreationally and irresponsibly can lead to some kind of addictive behavior. And that's coming out now with ketamine and all. It's coming out now. So I would say psychedelics should be used selectively and therapeutically. Maybe they could, once in a while recreationally, but they shouldn't be a regular practice for everyday experience. I'm now 76. Maybe I've had 6 or 7 psychedelic experiences, starting at the age of 17 with LSD.
Oh, wow, quite young.
Ayahuasca in Ecuador and in the forest with shamans. A couple of other experiences with psilocybin. But I don't feel the need, actually, to use psychedelics. I can now go there without psychedelics. And I also think as we expand our technologies of VR, the VR experience will be able to give you the psychedelic experience as well.
Obviously, in Silicon Valley and across the world, we see an increase in microdosing, LSD, mushrooms to enhance people's
Yeah, they've been useful.
Do you think that's a malpractice or that could lead to problems?
I think there's a role for microdosing. Nothing is a universal panacea. We should realize that. But microdosing has helped a lot of people. Yeah.
Interesting. Going back to space-time, and essentially what you're saying is reality as we perceive it is not real. We have a quantum version of us. You've talked about this in your books, Quantum Body, Quantum Healing. How does that help, that knowledge of the quantum self, help us in our 3D lives to live better every day or less stressful every day?
If you understand that your fundamental reality is totally without form, if you understand that your fundamental reality is infinite possibilities, if you understand that that fundamental reality is self-regulating, self-organizing, synchronistic, and open to all possibilities, it opens the door to creativity, freedom, and ultimately self-regulation. So what we call the quantum body in science is actually the causing body in many ancient traditions. You have a causal body, which they call the soul or spirit, then the mental body, subtle body, which is the mind, intellect, and ego, then the physical body and the physical world. So it starts with the causal body, then the subtle body, then the physical body, and then the physical world as a projection of all of that. So that the field of awareness is the most fundamental field. Now, in regular quantum mechanics, that field is material, but then it's very counterintuitive. How does matter behave like a wave and a particle? How do particles move from one location to another location, taking infinite routes simultaneously? How does tunneling occur? They work through objects which are supposedly cannot be penetrated. How does teleportation occur? How does non-liquid correlation or synchronicity occur? These are not the properties of matter. If anything, they're the properties of mind. And they are actually not even properties of mind. They're properties of consciousness. I think quantum consciousness is the fundamental reality. Everything else is a modified expression of that. So when I say quantum body, I'm referring to the formless infinite domain, which is the source of all forms and phenomena. Every form is actually a phenomenon. And what is the phenomenon? Fluctuations of consciousness, sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. We can give them names, but that's what we experience, the fluctuations of consciousness as mind, body, and the physical world. But consciousness itself is the infinite, formless, borderless, spaceless, timeless, unimaginable source of all experience.
And is that ocean of consciousness that you talk about, is that God? Or is that spirit? Is that unity?
God or spirit or infinite being or formless infinity is the source of every finite experience. Even in spiritual traditions, God doesn't have an image. The image is a symbolic expression of the formless.
Our Future Nature is brought to you today by Authentic Gallery. Authentic Gallery makes buying and collecting stunning and impactful art easy with a high percentage of proceeds going towards our vetted partner charities. If you want to buy art and contribute to an impactful cause, well, check out Authentic Gallery. That's spelled AWETHENTIC gallery.com. As a special treat to my listeners, you can use the discount code OFNPOD. That's OFNPOD to get a 10% discount off all of my limited edition prints. So check out Authentic Gallery and start browsing now. Thanks very much.
So understanding how we can heal ourselves through this knowledge. I'm really
Going back to the source.
going back to the source. So mental, physical illness can both be changed through that.
Well, right now we are told that 5% of disease is genetically determined. I think genes are the experiences of our ancestors. And they're alive in your body, in every cell. Right now, you can't move, you can't speak unless there's genetic activity. What is that genetic activity? It's the experience of your ancestors. And some of these are so indelible that they seem you can't erase them. That's genes. But epigenetics says that you can actually pass on experience to the next generation. So you take a mouse that enjoys the smell of lavender, But if you give it mild electrical shocks, then the descendants of the mouse are afraid of lavender, even though they directly never experience the electrical shock. That seems to be transferable. So epigenetics means you don't change the genes, but the activity of the genes can be transferred. And that's what's the activity of the genes? Experience. Experience modifies the activity of the genes. Now we call that the environment, which, when people think of environment, they only think of this environment. They don't think of the mental environment or the, emotional environment. In fact, what we call the environment is an extension of the same formless entity, whatever it is, infinite being, formless being, quantum reality. If you go to that source, it is independent of its expressions if you don't interfere with it. And so memory of trauma is epigenetic suffering, memory of trauma. And that memory of trauma is both genetic and epigenetic. And it's our history. We are traumatized throughout history. It's been the history of human race, or the history of life in general, is we are all part of the food chain. So, we experience trauma, and that is then genetic and epigenetically recycled. You can minimize it by going to the source of all experience and not interfering with it. That's where meditation, mindfulness, psychedelics, all this come in.
So Shelley and I are actually brother and sister. We share genes from our common parents, ancestors. You're saying then that epigenetically we might also have had trauma passed down through our genes from our parents.
Yeah.
But that at the end of the day, we are biologically quite similar, but obviously our souls are totally non-similar, or they're totally random.
You can have identical twins raised in the same environment. One has schizophrenia and one doesn't. So it's a mystery. In a sense, it's a mystery. Genes do not determine our fate. I can say that categorically, unless you believe in that concept. Because experience is subject to revision. You can choose experience, And so ultimately everything is modifiable. Some things are not so easily modifiable, like the mutations that are fully penetrant. On the other hand, environment makes a big difference. You have two identical twins born in Bangladesh. They're, let's say, orphans. One is adopted by somebody in Boston, gets to be a professor at Harvard. The other ends up in a gutter with a begging bowl. And they are the same genes, but they're epigenetically totally modified. So, it's very complex. On the other hand, the source of all experience is independent of experience. That is the important thing to remember. The program on the television set is dependent on the screen, but the screen is not dependent on the program.
And what is your personal desire with sharing this knowledge and this wisdom with us?
I just feel that, we're sleepwalking to almost extinction, climate change, war, terrorism, chronic disease, social injustice, gender injustice, racial injustice. It's totally unnecessary. If we wake up to reality, we can change that to a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world. In the big picture, does it matter? No, we're a speck of dust in what I call the junkyard of infinity. And in the bigger scheme, it doesn't matter. But as far as we're concerned, it'd be nice to upgrade the illusion.
Right.
Although people like horror movies too, they pay to go. So it's all good.
You talked about the almost infinite variations of species, and we are just one species that has access to a higher consciousness that we know of. Do you believe that there are other species that are smarter than us?
It would be irrational to think that there aren't, that, in this infinite possible dimensions of space-time, we couldn't be the only species. And one little speck of dust on a minor planet around an ordinary star. I mean, if there are 2 trillion galaxies and average galaxy has 100 billion stars, and the average star has a number of planets, then it would be silly to think we're the only one species that has this kind of intelligence. In fact, I believe there are species with more advanced intelligence than ours in our future. But in reality, future, past, and present is all in the same block universe.
I noticed your watch doesn't actually tell the time.
It's interesting. It's a new watch. It's called No Watch and doesn't tell the time, but it's measuring everything that's happening.
Okay.
It's a biosensor.
Biosensor. But just bringing this back.
Which we are as biological organisms. We are all biosensors. That's all we are.
And just following on from that concept of there are other species that have potentially the same consciousness or higher levels of consciousness than us, extraterrestrial. Do you believe that there's a lot of archaeological findings now coming to light? Gudun Padang in Indonesia, they think now 22,000 BC, as Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which they date as 8,500 BC. The history of mankind is being rewritten as we speak. Do you believe that there was a advanced civilization before our civilization that's passed down this knowledge, or at least pointed to it?
Everything is cyclical. So, you go through these periods of extreme creativity and advanced civilizations, and then they crumble, they start all over again. The latest theories in cosmology are also talking in Big Bang, Big Crunch, and Big Bounce.
Big bounce.
But it's sort of cyclical.
Because the Mayas talked about it, and I think the Vedas talked about the 26,000-year cycle, and we're coming to the age of Aquarius. We could be coming for a big bump.
Those are good metaphors for ultimate reality, which is incomprehensible.
You talk a lot about confronting death and knowing that that's coming for us. What do you think is coming after death for you personally?
Again, if you identify yourself as a person, then there's death. If you identify yourself as consciousness, which the person is a process, then birth and death are happening all the time. Every thought dies as soon as it's born. Every perception dies as soon as it's born. Every experience dies as soon as it's born. So birth and death are the continuum of existence. Life is not birth and death. Life is the continuum of birth and death. If you don't have death, you can't have birth. Like you can't have an on without an off. You can't have an off without an on. But what is it that's going on and off is the infinite, incomprehensible consciousness that we are. So if you identify with that, then it's similar to asking what happens to space if the container of space, which is this room, is destroyed. Well, the space is not destroyed. It was there before the room was constructed. And after the room is destroyed, the space is infinite. That's a metaphor. And consciousness is like that. What happens to you and I if our phone lines are disconnected or we don't have access to the internet? You still are there, but the instrument for communication is not there. So the fault of the instrument is not a reflection of the user of the instrument, which is infinite, not subject to birth or death. So if you identify with your body, then of course there's death. But as we just went through, there's no such thing as a body. It's a changing perceptual activity in consciousness. There's no such thing as a mind even. These are all processes in consciousness. So the infinite has infinite processes, and we are the infinite beyond all conditioning.
So by that reasoning then, that Deepak is not really Deepak. Deepak, you are channeling some sort of quantum spirit or body, and those thoughts, you have your thoughts in the book aren't really on your own.
It is a symbolic representation of a particular story. But that story has many versions. My mother had a different idea of who Deepak is. My children have a different idea. Society has a different idea. So which idea is right? None. Okay, so who is Deepak? It's a symbolic representation, a process of the infinite.
Just final two questions, because I know we're running out of time. Just bringing it back to conscious leadership, because I know you just launched a new program, an online course about conscious leadership, and we're doing a lot of conscious leadership programming and boot camps in Asia. What is conscious leadership, and what does knowledge about this quantum realm add to our experience of being a leader?
Conscious leadership is based on what we call the soul of leadership. It is leadership that depends, I use the acronym LEADERS, LEADERS. So L stands for nucleus and creative vision. E stands for emotional intelligence. A stands for awareness, which includes intuition, creativity, higher vision. And D stands for dreaming and doing. E stands for empowerment. R stands for responsibility. And S is the magical ingredient, which we call synchronicity or entanglement. So I've taught that course for many years at Northwestern University, at Columbia University. Finally, I decided to put it online and use it as a certification process. It's complete. It hasn't yet been made public, but it can be an online course for anyone who wants to be certified in conscious leadership. But it can also be then practically employed in leadership in the corporate world, in the business world, hopefully in the political world, which needs it more than anything else, because ultimately politicians run the world. So we're doing that. I've offered it to, once I've done it through the Chopra Foundation in Sweden. As I told you, doing it with academics. Right now, an abbreviated version is available free of charge on the Chopra Foundation website. So if you go on the website, you can take an abbreviated version. But the detailed version with all the quizzes and all the exams and all the certification is coming out based on the direct with edX, the educational company. And hopefully people can certify online, but also we can do it as a, real learning program, as a training program. As I said, in the past, I've only done it with academic institutions. But then I thought, why restrict it to academia? Because it tends to be elitist. Well, no, but it's based on well-being, corporate well-being, social well-being, physical well-being, emotional well-being, community well-being, financial well-being, all of them as inseparable from each other.
You mentioned before that through these measures, you can actually measure the success of an organization or the future of it.
Individual or a family or a community, even a country.
And in your ideal world of the future, what would young people what kind of industries would be built up? How do we deal with the growing nature?
My go-to phrases are peace, justice, sustainability, health, and joy.
And just finally, because we talked about it before a little bit, but what's the importance of rebalancing leadership and having more female voices, leading the world and making decisions?
Voices that are nurturing, that focus on beauty and intelligence and truth and harmony and nurturing and tenderness. We've outlived the predatory culture of male dominance that began with the hunter-gatherers. And we need to graduate down to the next level, which is poetically called the divine feminine, but it's not necessarily restricted to females. Everybody needs the divine feminine.
And hopefully through your courses, we can all activate that.
I hope so. Now we can put it out in multiple languages now that we have AI and all that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Deepak. Thank you.
Thank you all much.
Our Future Nature is also brought to you today by Authentic Journeys. Authentic Journeys brings together high-performing entrepreneurs, CEOs, leaders, and changemakers with ancient and modern modalities for intense personal growth to deeply align your individual and our collective purposes for positive change in the world. All of our trips are carbon offset, and we only partner with companies that have sustainable practices and credentials. Let us take you on a journey that will enrich your mind, body, and soul while helping the planet and local communities. Check out AuthenticJourneys.com. That's AWETHENTIC journeys.com to learn more about our upcoming wellness experiences, travel adventures, and retreats to help you find your awe. Thank you for tuning in to Our Future Nature. Please remember to like and subscribe to keep up with the latest episodes. And if you enjoyed the podcast, it'd be really helpful if you could take a few minutes to leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Please also follow us on Instagram and Threads at Our Future Nature Pod for behind the scenes and additional resources, or on X at OFN_podcast. That's OFN_podcast. You can find our social media pages on the podcast episode description. You can also follow me at Sean Lee-Davies if you want to be updated on the work that I do in green entrepreneurship, advocacy, and conservation. And finally, Our Future Nature is powered by the team at Authentic Studio. Thanks everyone, and see you next time.